The stagecoach rumbled into Lead, South Dakota on a bitter October morning in 1877, carrying a woman who had lost everything except the clothes on her back and the hollow ache in her chest, where hope used to live. Adelaide Jensen clutched the worn leather bag containing her last possessions as the driver helped her down onto the muddy street. The gold rush had transformed this Dakota Territory settlement into something barely civilized, all rough timber buildings and rougher men. She pulled her thin shawl tighter against the mountain wind, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake coming here. Behind her lay a trail of death and disappointment. Her husband of 2 years had died from cholera in Omaha, taking with him not just her future, but the last of their savings on his treatment. Her parents were gone 5 years now. Her brother had disappeared into the California goldfields and never returned. At 23 years old, Adelaide had learned that faith was a luxury for people who had not watched every dream turn to dust. The advertisement for a schoolteacher in Lead had seemed like providence when she found it crumpled in a corner of the boarding house where she had been washing linens to pay for her room. Now, standing in the rutted street with miners eyeing her like she was a piece of fresh meat, she wondered if Providence had a cruel sense of humor. "Miss Jensen." A woman's voice cut through the din of hammering and shouting. Adelaide turned to see a stout woman in her 50s approaching, her face weathered but kind. "I'm Martha Hendricks. I run the boarding house and helped place the advertisement for the teaching position." "Yes, I am Adelaide Jensen." She tried to summon a smile but felt it die somewhere between her heart and her lips. Martha's sharp eyes took in Adelaide's threadbare dress and the shadows under her eyes. "You look like you have had a hard journey. Come along then. School does not start until next week, so you will have time to settle in. The town council arranged a room for you above the general store." As they walked down the main street, Martha kept up a steady stream of information about Lead. The homestake mine was bringing in fortunes in gold. The population had swelled to nearly 5,000. Churches were being built, proper houses going up. It was becoming a real town, not just a mining camp. Adelaide heard the words, but they seemed to come from very far away. She had heard promises before. She had believed in futures that never materialized. The part of her that used to dream had been buried alongside her husband in that Omaha cemetery. The room above the general store was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. Martha left her to rest, promising to bring supper later. Adelaide sat on the bed and stared at her hands. They were rough now, reddened from washing and scrubbing. "Ladies' hands," her mother used to call them when Adelaide had been the daughter of a prosperous merchant in St. Louis. That girl seemed like someone from a storybook now, not real at all. That first week passed in a haze of preparation. She met the town council, a group of self-important men who looked her over like livestock before approving her position. She saw the schoolhouse, a simple structure with benches and a blackboard. She met some of the families whose children would be in her care. Everyone was perfectly polite and perfectly distant, the way frontier people were with strangers who might not last the winter. Sunday morning dawned clear and cold. Adelaide had no intention of attending church services. The very idea made something bitter rise in her throat. She had prayed desperately as her husband thrashed in his sick, had begged God to spare him, had promised anything and everything if only William could live. Those prayers had echoed off empty heavens. She was done with that particular disappointment. Instead, she decided to take a walk beyond the town's edge, to see something other than muddy streets and rough buildings. She followed a path that wound up into the hills, breathing in the sharp pine-scented air. The aspens were turning gold, and despite her determination to feel nothing, she found the beauty struck something deep inside her. The path opened into a meadow, and that was where she saw him for the first time. Benjamin Foster was on his knees in the grass, and for a startled moment, Adelaide thought he was hurt. Then she realized he was praying, his hat beside him, his head bowed, his lips moving silently. She froze, not wanting to intrude, but a twig snapped under her foot. His head came up, and she found herself looking into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. He was perhaps 27 or 28, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and a face that was handsome in a solid, weathered way. He got to his feet in one smooth motion, reaching for his hat. "I apologize, miss. Did not mean to startle you." His voice was deep, with the slight drawl of someone from further south. "This is not private land. You are welcome to the meadow. I am the one who interrupted you." Adelaide felt her cheeks warm. "I will leave you to your devotions. No need." He settled his hat on his head and gave her a small smile. "I come up here most Sunday mornings. More peaceful than the church in town, though I imagine God hears just as well from a meadow." Adelaide felt something twist inside her. "I doubt God hears from anywhere." The words came out more bitter than she intended. Benjamin's expression shifted, became more attentive. He did not respond immediately, just studied her with those unsettling blue eyes. "You are the new school teacher," he said finally. "Adelaide Jensen. I heard you had arrived." "And you are Benjamin Foster. I have a ranch about 5 miles northwest of here, cattle mostly, some horses. I come into town for supplies and church when the weather permits." "Well, Mr. Foster, I will leave you to your communion with the divine." She started to turn away, wanting to escape that steady gaze that seemed to see too much. "Wait." Something in his voice made her pause. "You look like someone who has had her fill of empty words, so I will not offer any. But if you want company for walking, I would be glad of it. Sometimes the silence of another person is better than the noise in your own head." Adelaide knew she should refuse. She had come out here to be alone, to not have to pretend for anyone. But there was something in his face, a gentleness that did not demand anything, that made her nod slowly. They walked together through the meadow and into the pine forest beyond. Benjamin did not press her with questions or fill the silence with chatter. He simply walked beside her, occasionally pointing out a hawk circling overhead or the track of a deer in the soft earth. It should have been awkward, but somehow it was not. "How long have you had your ranch?" Adelaide asked finally, more because the silence was becoming too comfortable than because she wanted to know. 3 years now. Came up from Texas after the war. I was just a boy during the fighting, but old enough to see what it did to people. Wanted to start fresh somewhere." He paused. "Dakota territory seemed about as fresh as you could get. And is it? Fresh, I mean. Some days." He glanced at her. "Some days the past follows anyway." They had circled back toward the town now. Adelaide could see the church steeple rising above the other buildings. The sound of him singing drifted on the wind, thin and reedy. "I should get back," she said. "May I ask you something, Miss Jensen?" Benjamin stopped walking, and she stopped too, facing him. "That thing you said earlier about God not hearing. Do you really believe that? Or is it that you are angry because he did not answer the way you wanted?" The question was like a slap. Adelaide felt her walls slam up, her spine straighten. "You do not know anything about me or what I have been through." "You are right, I do not. But I know that look in your eyes. I have seen it before, in mirrors and in the faces of men who came back from the war. It is the look of someone who has stopped believing in anything. And what if I have? What business is it of yours?" Her voice was sharp, defensive. Benjamin was quiet for a long moment. "None at all, I suppose, except that I hate to see it, hate to see someone give up." "I have not given up. I am here, am I not, starting over, teaching school, making a life. Even to her own ears, the words sounded hollow. Starting over is not the same as living. He said it gently, without accusation. I should know. I did it for a long time after I came here. And what changed? The question came out before she could stop it. I remembered that faith is not about getting what you want. It is about trusting that there is a purpose even when you cannot see it. It is about believing that the story is not over just because you have hit a hard chapter. He looked at her with those steady blue eyes. I know that probably sounds like empty words to you right now. It does, Adelaide said honestly. Then I will not say more. But if you ever want to talk or walk or just sit in silence, my ranch is 5 miles northwest. Follow the creek past the old sawmill. Anyone in town can give you better directions. He tipped his hat. Good day, Miss Jensen. I hope Lead treats you kindly. He walked away toward the church, and Adelaide stood watching him go, feeling strangely unsettled. She did not want his faith or his understanding. She did not want anything except to get through each day without the pain crushing her. But that night, lying in her narrow bed above the general store, she kept thinking about what he had said, about the look in her eyes, about giving up versus living. School started on Monday morning with 12 children ranging from 6 to 14. Adelaide threw herself into the work, grateful for the distraction. She taught reading and arithmetic, geography and history. The children were rough around the edges, the way frontier children were, but eager to learn. Some of the older boys tested her authority at first, but she had learned to be firm in Omaha, teaching at a charity school to help make ends meet. She did not back down, and they learned to respect her. 2 weeks passed. Adelaide established a routine. She woke before dawn, prepared her lessons, taught through the day, then spent her evenings grading work and planning for the next day. It was exhausting, but exhaustion meant she fell asleep quickly and did not lie awake remembering. Martha Hendricks proved to be a friend in her gruff way. She brought Adelaide hot meals and company, filling her in on the town gossip. Adelaide learned that Benjamin Foster was well respected, known for his honesty and his kindness. He had helped several families through hard times, loaning money he never pressed to have repaid, helping to build barns and houses, taking in a young man whose family had died of fever and teaching him the ranching business. Good man, Benjamin Foster, Martha said one evening as they sat in Adelaide's room, Martha mending and Adelaide correcting slates. Surprised some woman has not snapped him up. Lord knows enough have tried. Adelaide kept her eyes on the slate in front of her. I am sure he will marry when he is ready. MMM. Martha gave her a knowing look. Heard you two went walking that first Sunday. He was simply being polite. Adelaide felt her cheeks warm. Nothing more, if you say so, dear. But Martha's words planted something in Adelaide's mind, some small seed of curiosity. She found herself wondering about Benjamin Foster more than she wanted to. What his ranch was like. What had brought him to Dakota territory. Why he had that same shadow in his eyes that he claimed to see in hers. She told herself it did not matter. She was not looking for romance or rescue. She was simply surviving, and that was enough. Then October turned to November, and the first real snow came, and everything changed. Adelaide woke one Thursday morning to find the world transformed. Snow had fallen thick and heavy overnight, drifting against buildings and covering the streets. It was beautiful and treacherous all at once. She made her way carefully to the schoolhouse, arriving to find only half her students had come. The others lived too far out and could not make the journey in the storm. They got through the morning lessons, but by noon the snow was falling again, harder now. Adelaide dismissed school early, telling the children who lived in town to go straight home. The 3 students who lived outside town looked worried. "My pa said if it got bad, I should stay in town," said Tommy Wheeler, a 10-year-old boy whose family had a homestead 6 miles west. "He said we could stay with the Hendricks." Adelaide made sure all 3 children had somewhere safe to wait out the storm, then began her own careful walk back to her room. The wind had picked up, driving the snow sideways. She was halfway there when she heard the shout. "Help! Someone help!" She turned to see a man struggling with a horse that had gotten tangled in some fallen timber at the edge of the street. The horse was panicking, eyes rolling, hooves flailing. The man was trying to calm it, but getting too close to those deadly hooves. Without thinking, Adelaide ran toward them. She had grown up around her father's delivery horses, knew how to handle frightened animals. She approached from the side, speaking in a low, calm voice, letting the horse see her. The animal's ear flicked toward her. She kept talking, nonsense words, soothing sounds, as she worked to untangle the rope from the timber. The man backed off, giving her room. The horse was still frightened but responding to her voice. She got the rope free and held it firmly, stroking the animal's neck, still talking softly. The horse's breathing began to slow. "That was the bravest damn thing I have seen a woman do," the man said. He was older, weathered, with a thick beard frosted with snow, "or the most foolish." "Sometimes they are the same thing," Adelaide said. Now that the danger had passed, she was starting to shake. "You are that new school teacher. I am Bill Sanders. This is my horse and I owe you a debt. Another few minutes and he would have broken a leg or worse. I am glad I could help." The shaking was getting worse. The cold was seeping through her thin coat. "You need to get inside. Storm's getting worse." Sanders took his horse's lead. "Thank you again, miss." Adelaide made it back to her room barely. Her hands were so cold she could hardly work the door latch. Once inside, she collapsed onto the bed, her whole body trembling. Not just from cold now, but from delayed fear. That horse could have killed her. One wrong move and those hooves would have caught her skull. What had she been thinking, rushing in like that? But she knew the answer. For those few minutes, helping that frightened animal, she had felt something other than the numbness that had become her constant companion. She had felt alive. The storm raged for 3 days. Adelaide stayed in her room, venturing out only to the general store below for supplies. The whole town seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the weather to break. On the 3rd day, the wind finally died and the sun emerged, turning the world into a blinding expanse of white. Adelaide was preparing her lessons for the next day when she heard footsteps on the stairs, heavier than Martha's. A knock came at her door. "Miss Jensen." "It is Benjamin Foster." Her heart did an odd little jump. She smoothed her hair and opened the door. Benjamin stood there in a heavy coat dusted with snow, his hat in his hands, his expression serious. "Mr. Foster, is something wrong? May I come in? I have news." She stepped back, letting him enter. He seemed to fill the small room, making it feel even tinier than usual. He did not sit, just stood turning his hat in his hands. There was an accident at the Miller homestead during the storm. Tree fell on their cabin, killed John Miller and his wife. His voice was heavy with grief. Their children survived, 3 of them, boys aged 8, 6, and 4. Adelaide felt her chest constrict. Those poor children. They have no family here. John's brother is back in Iowa, but the marshal got word that he does not want them, says he has too many mouths to feed already. Benjamin's jaw tightened. They will end up in an orphanage in Deadwood if someone does not take them. That is horrible. And it was. She knew what orphanages were like, had seen them in Omaha. Overcrowded, understaffed places where children learn to survive but rarely to thrive. "I am going to take them," Benjamin said. "I have the room on the ranch and I have wanted a family. Just thought it would happen differently, I suppose." He gave a small, sad smile. "Anyway, I came to town to make the arrangements, and Bill Sanders told me what you did with his horse. He said you were fearless. I was stupid. Maybe, or maybe you were remembering how to care about something." He looked at her with those steady blue eyes. "I have a favor to ask, and you can absolutely say no. But I am one man, and I have never raised children, and those boys have just lost everything. I could use help, at least at first. I could pay you to come out to the ranch on weekends, help me figure out how to care for them properly." "I know nothing about caring for children beyond teaching them," Adelaide protested. "You know more than I do, and those boys know you. The two older ones are in your school." That was true. Tommy and Sam Miller sat in the second row, usually whispering to each other until she gave them a sharp look. "Good boys," their mother had said at the parent meeting, just full of energy, their mother who was now dead. "I do not think I am the right person for this," Adelaide said. "I am not good at giving comfort. I am not good at much of anything anymore." Benjamin stepped closer, not touching her but near enough that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. "I do not believe that. I think you are someone who has been hurt badly and is afraid of being hurt again. But those boys do not need someone perfect. They need someone who shows up and tries. Will you try?" Adelaide wanted to say no, wanted to protect herself from any more attachment, any more potential loss. But she looked at Benjamin's face and saw the same desperate hope she had once felt, back when she still believed in things. "I will come on Saturdays," she heard herself say. "Just until they are settled." Relief washed over his features. "Thank you, truly. I will come get you Saturday morning if the weather holds." After he left, Adelaide sat on her bed and wondered what she had just agreed to, getting involved with those grieving boys, with Benjamin and his unshakable faith. It was exactly what she should not do. But somehow, she could not quite summon the energy to regret it. Saturday dawned clear and cold. Benjamin arrived at 9 in a wagon pulled by two sturdy horses. Adelaide climbed up beside him, clutching a basket of food Martha had insisted on sending. The ride out to the ranch took nearly an hour through snow-covered hills and valleys. Benjamin kept up a steady stream of conversation, telling her about the ranch, the cattle, the hired hand named Jack Morris who helped him run the place. "The boys arrived 2 days ago," he said as they turned onto a narrow road winding through pine trees. "They are not talking much. The little one, Charlie, has not said a word since it happened. Just follows his brothers around with these big scared eyes." "That is normal," Adelaide said. "Grief takes people different ways. You sound like you know from experience." She did not answer and Benjamin did not press. The wagon crested a hill and the ranch spread out before them. It was bigger than Adelaide had expected, with a solid 2-story house, a large barn, corrals, and several outbuildings. Smoke rose from the chimney, and she could see cattle dotting the snowy meadows beyond. "It is beautiful," she said, surprising herself. "Thank you, I have worked hard on it." There was quiet pride in his voice. "Never thought I would have a place like this, but sometimes life gives you things you did not know you needed." The wagon pulled up in front of the house, and the door opened. 3 boys emerged, dressed in mismatched clothes that were slightly too big. Tommy and Sam Miller she recognized immediately. Charlie, the youngest, pressed against Tommy's leg, one thumb in his mouth. "Miss Jensen," Tommy's face lit up. "You came." "Of course I came." Adelaide climbed down from the wagon and Tommy rushed to her, almost knocking her over with his hug. She froze for a moment, then awkwardly patted his back. Sam came more slowly, his 8-year-old face trying hard to be brave. Charlie just watched with those big, scared eyes. "Boys, why do not you show Miss Jensen around while I tend to the horses?" Benjamin said. Then we will have some of that food she brought. Tommy grabbed Adelaide's hand and pulled her toward the barn, chattering about the horses and cattle and the new kittens in the hayloft. Sam followed, and eventually Charlie did too, still silent. They showed her everything with the enthusiasm of children momentarily distracted from their grief. Adelaide found herself responding, asking questions, even smiling at their excitement over the kittens. But she also saw the way Tommy's voice would suddenly falter, the way Sam's eyes would fill with tears he blinked away furiously. The way Charlie never let his brothers out of his sight. Later, inside the house, they sat around Benjamin's large kitchen table eating Martha's stew and fresh bread. The house was neat but sparse, the way a bachelor's home tended to be. Benjamin had clearly tried, hanging cheerful curtains in the windows and putting extra quilts on the beds, but it still felt empty somehow. "Tommy, Sam, you will be going back to school Monday," Benjamin said. "I will drive you in each morning and pick you up each afternoon until the weather improves. Charlie will stay here with me." "Will Miss Jensen be our teacher still?" Sam asked. "Of course," Adelaide said. "Nothing about school is changing." After lunch, Tommy and Sam went outside to play in the snow. Charlie fell asleep on the sofa, exhausted by grief. Benjamin and Adelaide sat at the kitchen table with coffee. "How are you managing?" Adelaide asked. "I have no idea what I am doing," Benjamin admitted. "Tommy cries himself to sleep every night. Sam is trying so hard to be strong that I am afraid he will break. And Charlie will not talk at all. The doctor says it is the shock, that he will talk when he is ready, but what if he is not ready? What if I am not enough for them?" The vulnerability in his voice struck something deep in Adelaide. This strong, faithful man was just as scared and uncertain as she was. "You are doing the best you can," she said. "That is all anyone can do. Is it enough, though? Those boys have already lost so much. They deserve someone who knows what he is doing. They deserve someone who loves them. Do you?" Benjamin looked at her, surprised by the directness of the question. "Yes," he said slowly. "I know I have only had them a few days, but yes, already." "Then that is what matters." Adelaide was not sure she believed her own words, but she could see Benjamin needed to hear them. They talked for a long time about the boys, about how to help them through their grief, about practical matters like clothes and schoolwork. Adelaide found herself relaxing despite herself. Benjamin was easy to talk to, thoughtful and genuine. He did not try to pretend he had all the answers. He just tried, the way he had asked her to try when the sun began to set. Benjamin drove her back to town. The boys waved goodbye from the porch, even Charlie, though he still did not speak. "Thank you," Benjamin said as they drove through the twilight. "This helped more than you know. I did not do much. You showed up. Sometimes that is everything." Adelaide came back the next Saturday and the one after that. Gradually, it became a routine. She would arrive in the morning, help with the boys, share meals, talk with Benjamin about the challenges of raising traumatized children. She showed him how to braid hair when Tommy got gum stuck in his. She suggested reading to Charlie at bedtime, even if he did not respond. She played simple games with Sam that let him be a child instead of trying to be grown up, and slowly, she saw the boys begin to heal. Tommy smiled more. Sam allowed himself to cry sometimes. And one December morning, Charlie spoke his first words since his parents died. Just 2 words, but they were enough. "Morning, Benjamin," he said at breakfast, and Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. Adelaide was there that morning. She had stayed overnight because of a storm, sleeping in the guest room. She felt her own throat tighten at Charlie's small voice, at the hope on Benjamin's face. "Good morning, Charlie," Benjamin said, his voice rough. "I am so glad to hear your voice." That was the day Adelaide realized she was in trouble. because somewhere between helping traumatized boys and watching Benjamin pour his whole heart into caring for them, she had started to care. Not just about the boys, though she cared about them desperately, but about Benjamin Foster, with his steady faith and his gentle strength and his refusal to give up on anyone. She did not want to care. Caring meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant pain. But it was too late. The walls she had built around her heart were crumbling despite her best efforts. Winter deepened. Lead was buried under snow, and Adelaide spent more time at the ranch out of necessity. The roads were often impassable, and it made more sense to stay there than risk the journey back and forth. Benjamin gave her the guest room and never made her feel unwelcome. Jack, the hired hand, was a quiet man in his 30s who treated Adelaide with respectful distance and was good with the boys. Christmas approached. Adelaide had not celebrated the holiday since William died. It had seemed like a mockery to pretend joy she did not feel. But the boys were excited, talking endlessly about what they hoped St. Nicholas might bring, and Benjamin was determined to make it special for them. "Will you help me?" he asked Adelaide one evening after the boys had gone to bed. They were sitting by the fire in the front room, the only sound the crackling of the logs. "With Christmas, I mean. I want it to be good for them. I know it will be hard, their first one without their parents, but I want them to have some happiness too." "I am probably the worst person to ask," Adelaide said. "I hate Christmas." "Why?" Benjamin asked gently. She had not meant to tell him, but something about the firelight and the quiet and the way he looked at her made the words come. "William died on Christmas Eve. We were supposed to go to a party at his employer's house. Instead, I sat by his bed and watched him die. Every Christmas since has felt like reopening a wound." Benjamin was quiet for a moment. "I am sorry. That must have been unbearable." It was. Adelaide stared into the fire. "I prayed so hard that night, begged God to save him, made all kinds of promises, and William died anyway just after midnight. Christmas morning. The church bells were ringing and he was gone. And that is when you lost your faith. Would you not? What kind of God ignores prayers like that?" Benjamin leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I do not know why William died, Adelaide. I do not know why the Millers died, or why those boys had to lose their parents, or why any of the terrible things that happen in this world happen. I have asked God those questions more times than I can count, and I do not get answers, not clear ones anyway. Then how can you still believe? Because faith is not about understanding everything. It is about trusting even when you do not understand." He looked at her, his blue eyes intense in the firelight. "And because I have seen too much grace to believe there is nothing behind it, those boys surviving when their parents died. You being here to help them when I had no idea what I was doing. Small moments of beauty in the middle of terrible circumstances. That has to mean something, or it is just random chance. Maybe, but I choose to believe it is more." He reached out and took her hand, the gesture so unexpected that Adelaide froze. "I know you are hurting, Adelaide. I know you have lost your faith. But can I tell you what I told you that first day? You can borrow mine until yours returns." Adelaide felt tears burn her eyes. "What if it never returns?" "Then you keep borrowing. I have enough for both of us." She should pull her hand away. Should protect herself from this kindness that felt more dangerous than any cruelty. But she did not. She sat there with her hand in Benjamin's, watching the fire, and let herself imagine, just for a moment, that faith was possible. They planned Christmas together. Benjamin and Jack went out and cut a pine tree, which the boys helped decorate with strings of popcorn and paper ornaments. Adelaide baked cookies and pies, teaching the boys how to roll dough. Benjamin carved small wooden animals for each child, working late at night after they were asleep. Adelaide knitted them scarves and mittens from yarn Martha had sent. Christmas Eve came, and Adelaide felt the familiar dread rising in her chest. But she pushed it down, focusing on the boys' excitement. They hung their stockings, left cookies for St. Nicholas, and listened to Benjamin read the Christmas story from his worn Bible. Even that, which Adelaide had thought would be unbearable, was somehow okay. Benjamin's deep voice reading about hope and light in darkness. The boys snuggled against him, the fire crackling merrily. After the boys went to bed, Adelaide and Benjamin sat up preparing the gifts. They worked in comfortable silence, broken occasionally by quiet conversation. Adelaide felt oddly peaceful, the pain of past Christmases dulled by the strange contentment of the present moment. "Thank you," Benjamin said as they surveyed their work. The stockings were filled, the presents arranged under the tree. "This would not have been possible without you. The boys deserve a good Christmas. So do you." Benjamin looked at her, and there was something in his expression that made Adelaide's breath catch. "Adelaide, I need to tell you something. These last few months, having you here, seeing you with the boys, getting to know you better, I have developed feelings for you, deep feelings." Adelaide felt panic flutter in her chest. "Benjamin, I cannot. I know you are not ready, may never be ready. I am not asking for anything, I just needed you to know." He smiled, a little sad. "You are the strongest, bravest woman I have ever met. Even when you think you have nothing left, you keep showing up. You keep trying. That is its own kind of faith, even if you do not call it that." "I am not strong," Adelaide whispered. "I am terrified all the time. Terrified of caring, terrified of losing, terrified of everything. Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you keep going even though you are scared." Benjamin reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so tender that Adelaide felt something crack open inside her chest. "I am not asking you for anything, Adelaide. I just wanted you to know that you are seen. You are valued. And if you ever want to stop running from feeling things, I will be here." Adelaide felt tears slip down her cheeks. She had been so determined not to feel, not to hope, not to believe. But somehow Benjamin Foster had slipped past all her defenses with his steady kindness and his unshakable faith. She was falling in love with him, had been for weeks, and it terrified her more than anything ever had. "I cannot promise you anything," she said through her tears. "I am not asking for promises, just possibility." He pulled her into his arms then, and Adelaide let herself be held. Let herself cry for William and her lost faith and her terror of loving again. Benjamin just held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring wordless comfort. And for the first time since William died, Adelaide felt the tiniest flicker of something that might have been hope. Christmas morning brought chaos and joy. The boys woke at dawn and thundered down the stairs, shouting with excitement over their full stockings and the presents under the tree. Charlie laughed for the first time since his parents died, a bright peal of childish delight that brought tears to Benjamin's eyes. They opened presents and ate too much candy and played with their new toys. It was loud and messy and utterly wonderful. Adelaide found herself laughing, really laughing, as Tommy tried to teach her to play with his toy soldiers. She felt light, almost dizzy with it. When had she last laughed like this? She could not remember. That afternoon, after a huge Christmas dinner, the boys played in the snow while Adelaide helped Benjamin clean up. They worked side by side at the sink, washing and drying dishes, their shoulders occasionally brushing. "This was a good Christmas," Benjamin said. "Thank you for making it possible." "Thank you for reminding me that Christmas can be good," Adelaide replied. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she rose on her toes and kissed his cheek. "That was for being patient with me." Benjamin's smile could have lit the whole territory. "I can be patient for as long as you need." But Adelaide was discovering that she was tired of being patient with herself, tired of holding back out of fear. That night, after the boys were in bed and she and Benjamin were once again sitting by the fire, she made a decision. "Benjamin, what you said last night about having feelings for me." He looked at her, suddenly alert. "Yes, I have feelings for you too. I have been fighting them because I am scared, but I am tired of being scared. I am tired of being half alive." She took a deep breath. "I do not know if my faith will ever come back. I do not know if I can believe in God again. But I think I might be able to believe in you, in us, in possibility." Benjamin set down his coffee cup very carefully. "Are you sure? I do not want you to feel pressured." "I am not sure of anything," Adelaide said honestly, "but I am willing to try if you are, if I am." Benjamin laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Adelaide, I have been half in love with you since that first day in the meadow when you looked at me with those heartbroken eyes and said you had no faith left. I wanted to give you mine right then." "That is ridiculous," Adelaide said, but she was smiling. "You did not even know me. I knew enough." He reached out and took her hands. "I knew you were hurting and fighting and surviving. That was enough." "I am still hurting," Adelaide warned. "Still fighting. This will not be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is." Benjamin pulled her closer until she was sitting right beside him on the sofa. "We will take it slow, one day at a time, and if you need to borrow my faith, you borrow it. It is not a loan I will ever call in." Adelaide looked at this man who had somehow become essential to her, with his steady blue eyes and his gentle strength and his faith that would not quit. And she made another decision, one that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. "I have no faith left," she whispered, the words she had said to him all those months ago. Benjamin smiled, understanding immediately. "Then borrow mine until yours returns." And he kissed her, soft and gentle and full of promise. Adelaide kissed him back, feeling something inside her that had been frozen for so long begin to thaw. It hurt, this unfreezing, like blood returning to numb limbs. But it was also right, more right than anything had felt in years. They sat by the fire for a long time, talking and occasionally kissing, making plans and promises. Slow plans, careful promises, but real ones nonetheless. Adelaide would stay on at the school. Benjamin would keep ranching and raising the boys. They would court properly, take their time, see where things led. But they would do it together. When Adelaide finally went to her room that night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her lips still tingling from Benjamin's kisses, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. She was still scared. The fear had not magically disappeared. But alongside the fear was something else now. Hope, fragile as a candle flame but undeniably there. She did not pray, not yet. She was not ready for that. But she whispered into the darkness, "If you are there, if you are listening, thank you for Benjamin. Thank you for second chances." It was not much, but it was a start. Winter gave way to spring, and Adelaide and Benjamin's courtship deepened. He came to town every Sunday after church, and they walked together, talking for hours. She continued spending weekends at the ranch, and the boys accepted her more and more as part of their lives. Tommy started calling her Miss Adelaide instead of Miss Jensen. Sam confided his worries to her. Charlie held her hand when they walked. Adelaide was still teaching, still living above the general store during the week. But the ranch was beginning to feel like home in a way Lead never quite had. She loved the space and the quiet, the mountains in the distance, the cattle lowing in the fields. She loved watching Benjamin work, his easy competence with the animals and the land. She loved the life he had built there, and she loved him. It snuck up on her, that love, growing slowly like spring grass pushing through snow. She would catch herself watching him play with the boys and feel her heart swell. Or he would smile at her across the dinner table and she would think, yes, this is what I want. This man, this life, these children. By May, Benjamin raised the subject of marriage. They were sitting on the porch after the boys had gone to bed, watching the stars emerge in the vast Dakota sky. Adelaide, I need to know if this is going somewhere, he said carefully. I am not trying to pressure you, but I am 30 years old and I want a wife. I want to make this official, make you part of this family in every way, but only if that is what you want too. Adelaide had known this conversation was coming. She had been thinking about it for weeks, weighing her feelings against her fears. I want that too, she said. I want to marry you. I want to be a mother to those boys. I want to build a life here. She paused. I am still scared, Benjamin. I am scared of losing you the way I lost William. I am scared of getting everything I want and having it taken away. I am scared too, Benjamin admitted. I am scared every time I ride out to check on the herd that something will happen and I will leave those boys orphaned again. I am scared of not being a good enough husband or father, but I would rather be scared and try than be safe and alone. So would I. Adelaide turned to face him fully. Ask me, Benjamin. Ask me and I will say yes. He smiled, that wonderful warm smile that made her feel like she could do anything. Then he slid off his chair and onto one knee. Adelaide Jensen, you are the bravest, strongest woman I know. You have taught me that faith is not about having all the answers, but about showing up and trying anyway. You have brought light and love into my life and into the boys' lives. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you? Yes, Adelaide said, tears streaming down her face, happy tears this time. Yes, I will marry you. Benjamin stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. Adelaide kissed him back, pouring all her hope and fear and love into it. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. When? Benjamin asked. Soon, Adelaide said. I do not want a long engagement. I have wasted enough time being afraid. They married in June in the little church in Lead that Adelaide had refused to enter when she first arrived. Martha stood as her witness and Jack stood for Benjamin. The boys sat in the front pew, scrubbed and neat in their new clothes, grinning widely. Half the town turned out, curious about the schoolteacher who had captured Benjamin Foster's heart. Adelaide wore a simple blue dress Martha had helped her make, with wildflowers in her hair. Benjamin wore his Sunday suit and looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. When the minister asked if she took this man, Adelaide answered in a clear, strong voice, I do. And when Benjamin said his vows, promising to love and cherish her until death parted them, Adelaide felt something shift deep inside. The fear did not disappear, but it was smaller now, manageable, no longer the defining force of her existence. They had a small reception at the ranch, with neighbors bringing food and staying to dance in the yard as Jack played fiddle. The boys ran wild with the other children, high on cake and excitement. Adelaide danced with Benjamin as the sun set, his arms strong around her, his eyes full of love. Happy? He asked. Yes, Adelaide said and meant it. Scared but happy. I can live with that. That night in the bedroom that was now theirs, Benjamin made love to her with such tenderness that Adelaide cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of being cherished, of being home. Afterward they lay tangled together, talking softly in the darkness. I love you, Adelaide said. The words still felt strange on her tongue, like a language she had forgotten. I do not say it enough, but I do. I love you so much it terrifies me. I love you too, Benjamin said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. And I promise you, Adelaide, I am going to do everything in my power to keep being here, to keep showing up. I cannot promise nothing bad will ever happen, but I can promise I will not leave you willingly." "That is all anyone can promise," Adelaide said. She fell asleep in her husband's arms, listening to his steady heartbeat, and for the first time in years felt at peace. The months that followed were an adjustment. Adelaide was no longer the schoolteacher living alone, but a wife and mother to 3 rambunctious boys. She had to learn to balance the demands of the household with her own needs. Sometimes it was overwhelming. Sometimes she missed the simplicity of her solitary life. But mostly, she was happy. She loved waking up next to Benjamin, loved cooking meals for her family, loved the way the boys ran to her when they got hurt or scared. She loved being part of something bigger than herself. She finished out the school year, but when fall came, she did not return to teaching. A new teacher arrived from the east, a young woman with eager eyes who reminded Adelaide of herself before life had beaten her down. Instead, Adelaide focused on the ranch and the family. She learned to help Benjamin with the books, to tend the kitchen garden, to preserve food for winter. And slowly, gradually, she found herself praying again. Not the desperate prayers of her past, begging God to change things, but quiet conversations, thanking Him for small graces. For Tommy's laughter, for the way Charlie climbed into her lap and called her mama, for Benjamin's steady presence, for second chances. One night in September, as they lay in bed, Adelaide told Benjamin, "I think my faith might be coming back. Or maybe it is a new faith, different from what I had before, less about getting what I want and more about being grateful for what I have." Benjamin pulled her closer. "That sounds like a stronger faith to me." "It is your faith I borrowed," Adelaide said. "Your faith that kept me going when I had none of my own. So thank you for that, for not giving up on me." "Never," Benjamin said fiercely. "I will never give up on you." In October, Adelaide realized she was pregnant. She had been feeling tired and queasy, but attributed it to the hard work of running a household. When Martha came to visit and took one look at her and said, "You are with child," Adelaide was stunned. She told Benjamin that night, nervous about his reaction. They had not talked about having children of their own, both focused on the boys. "Really?" Benjamin's face lit up with joy. "Adelaide, that is wonderful. You are not worried. We already have 3 children, and now we will have 4. He put his hand on her still flat stomach, his expression awed. "A baby, our baby." The pregnancy was difficult at first. Adelaide was sick constantly for the first few months, exhausted all the time. Benjamin took over more of the household duties, and even the boys helped, bringing her water and sitting quietly with her when she needed to rest. But as winter came and the sickness passed, Adelaide began to enjoy being pregnant. She felt the baby move and marveled at the miracle of new life growing inside her. Benjamin was endlessly attentive, making sure she did not work too hard, rubbing her aching back, talking to her belly when he thought she was asleep. The boys were excited about the baby, arguing over whether it would be a brother or sister. Tommy was convinced it was a boy. Sam wanted a sister. Charlie did not care as long as it was a baby he could help take care of. "We are going to have to add on to the house," Benjamin said one evening as they discussed the future. "We will need more bedrooms." "We have time," Adelaide said. "The baby is not coming until May. I want to be prepared." Benjamin pulled her against his side. "I want everything to be perfect for you, for all of you." Adelaide turned to look at him. "It already is perfect. Maybe not the way I imagined perfect when I was young, but perfect for me now, for us." Spring came early that year. The snow melted and wildflowers bloomed across the meadows. Adelaide grew round with the baby, moving more slowly now but still insisting on helping with the household work. Benjamin worried constantly, but Adelaide felt strong, felt ready. In May, on a warm afternoon with the windows open and wildflowers on the table, Adelaide went into labor. Martha came out from town to help, along with the doctor. Benjamin paced in the front room with the boys, who were anxious and excited. The labor was long and hard. Adelaide had moments where she was certain she could not do this, where the pain was so intense she wanted to give up. But Martha held her hand and told her she was strong, she could do this. And in her mind, Adelaide heard Benjamin's voice from that day in the meadow so long ago, telling her to borrow his faith. She borrowed it. She held on to it through every contraction, every moment of doubt. And finally, just as the sun was setting, the baby came. A boy, loud and healthy, with a thatch of dark hair and his father's blue eyes. "You have a son," Martha said, laying the baby on Adelaide's chest. Adelaide looked at her child and felt overwhelmed by love so fierce it took her breath away. This tiny person, this miracle, was hers, theirs. She touched his soft cheek and started to cry. Benjamin came in moments later, his face anxious until he saw her and the baby. Then his expression transformed into pure joy. "Adelaide, he is perfect. You are perfect." He sat on the edge of the bed, touching the baby with gentle, wondering fingers. "We have a son." "We have 4 sons," Adelaide corrected, and they both laughed. They named him William after Adelaide's first husband. Benjamin suggested it, saying that love did not have to be forgotten to make room for new love. Adelaide cried when he said it, grateful beyond words for his generosity of spirit. The boys were allowed in to meet their new brother. They were surprisingly gentle, even Tommy touching the baby's tiny hands with awed expressions. "He is so small," Sam whispered. "You were that small once," Adelaide told him. "All of you were." "Can we help take care of him?" Charlie asked. "Of course you can," Benjamin said. "He is going to need all his big brothers looking out for him." That night, after everyone had finally settled down and the baby was sleeping in a cradle next to their bed, Benjamin and Adelaide lay together in the darkness. "Are you happy?" Benjamin asked. "More than I ever thought I could be," Adelaide said honestly. "When I came to lead, I thought my life was over. I thought I was just going through the motions until I died. And now look at me. I have a husband I love, 4 beautiful children, a home, a life. It feels like a miracle." "It is a miracle," Benjamin said. "Grace is always a miracle." Adelaide thought about that, about grace, about second chances and borrowed faith and love that healed even the deepest wounds, about the journey from despair to hope, from loneliness to family. "I have faith again," she said quietly. "Real faith. Not the kind that thinks I can control everything or that bad things will not happen, but faith that believes there is purpose and love and beauty even in the hard times. You gave that back to me, Benjamin. You and the boys and this life we have built." "You gave it to yourself," Benjamin said. "I just held the door open. You were the one brave enough to walk through it." The years passed quickly after that, full of the beautiful chaos of raising 4 boys. William grew from a baby into a toddler and then a little boy, following his big brothers everywhere. The older boys thrived, their grief over their parents' death never disappearing, but becoming part of who they were rather than all of who they were. Tommy became a skilled horseman, helping Benjamin on the ranch. Sam discovered a love of books and learning, often reading to his younger brothers. Charlie's gentle nature made him perfect for caring for the animals, and he spent hours in the barn with the horses and cattle. Benjamin and Adelaide's love deepened with time, growing into something solid and unshakable. They had disagreements, as all couples do, but they worked through them with patience and communication. They had hard years when drought threatened the ranch or when one of the boys got sick. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from each other and from the faith they shared. Adelaide never went back to teaching at the school, but she taught her sons at home, making sure they had good educations. She became known in the community as someone you could count on, someone who would show up in a crisis with food and help and quiet strength. Women came to her with their troubles, and Adelaide found she had comfort to offer, born from her own suffering and healing. Benjamin's ranch prospered. With Jack's help and eventually Tommy's, they expanded the herd and bought more land. It was hard work, but good work, and Benjamin loved it. He loved working beside his sons, loved building something that would last beyond his lifetime. When William turned 5, Adelaide discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1884 she gave birth to a daughter. They named her Faith, because that seemed right somehow. Faith Elizabeth Foster, with her mother's dark hair and a smile that lit up the world. The boys adored their baby sister, protective and doting. Benjamin was completely smitten, this gruff rancher reduced to making silly faces to get his daughter to giggle. "We make good babies," he told Adelaide one night as they watched Faith sleep. "We make a good family," Adelaide corrected. Another 3 years passed, and Adelaide gave birth to another daughter, Grace. The name seemed equally fitting. Between the ranch and the children, Adelaide's days were full to bursting. Sometimes she felt exhausted, overwhelmed by the sheer amount of work involved in raising 7 children and running a household. But she also felt fulfilled in a way she never had before. This life she had built with Benjamin was rich and meaningful. She was surrounded by love, by purpose, by people who needed her and whom she needed in return. One Sunday, many years after that first meeting in the meadow, Adelaide and Benjamin took a walk up to that same spot. The children were old enough now to be left with Tommy and Sam in charge. It was a beautiful June afternoon, the meadow filled with wildflowers. "This is where I first saw you," Adelaide said, looking around. "Where you were praying. And where you told me you had no faith left," Benjamin said. "That was 9 years ago. Can you believe it? Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago, sometimes like yesterday." Adelaide sat down in the grass and Benjamin sat beside her. "That woman I was then feels like a stranger now. She was so broken, so determined not to feel anything. She was surviving the only way she knew how," Benjamin said, "and she was braver than she gave herself self-credit for. I was not brave. I was terrified." "Same thing," Benjamin said, making Adelaide laugh. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the birds and the wind in the trees. Then Benjamin said, "Do you ever wonder what your first husband would think? About your life now?" Adelaide considered the question. She thought about William less often now, the grief softened by time and happiness. But she still remembered him with fondness, still honored what they had shared. "I think he would be glad I found love again," she said finally. "William was a good man. He would want me to be happy. I wish I could have known him. He would have liked you. You are both good men, just in different ways." Adelaide leaned against Benjamin's shoulder. "I used to think that loving you was a betrayal of him, but I understand now that the heart is big enough for all of it. I can love the memory of what William and I had and love what you and I have now. They are different loves, but both real." "I am glad you think so," Benjamin said, "because I am never letting you go." Adelaide smiled. "Good, because I have no intention of being let go." They walked back to the ranch hand in hand, returning to the noise and chaos of their large family. That evening, after dinner, they all sat on the porch watching the sunset. Tommy was 18 now, talking about starting his own ranch someday. Sam was 16, planning to go to college in the East if they could afford it. Charlie at 14 was quieter but steady, already helping Benjamin with the ranch accounts. William was 10, all energy and mischief. Faith was 7, motherly and bossy with her younger sister. Grace was 4, sweet and shy and utterly adored by everyone. Benjamin looked at Adelaide across the porch, surrounded by their children, and smiled. The smile said everything words could not, that he loved her, that he was grateful for the life they had built, that he would keep choosing her, keep showing up, keep believing every day for the rest of his life. Adelaide smiled back, the same message in her eyes, and she sent up a silent prayer of thanks, not to change anything, not to ask for anything. Just gratitude for second chances and borrowed faith and love that had brought her back to life. Years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of children growing up. Tommy married at 21, a girl from Lead named Sarah, and started his own small ranch with Benjamin's help. Sam went east to college, studying literature and history, writing long letters home about his experiences. Charlie stayed on the ranch, becoming Benjamin's right-hand man, eventually marrying a widow with 2 young children of her own. William grew into a charming young man, good with horses and even better with people. The girls grew too, Faith becoming serious about her studies and Grace showing talent with music. Benjamin and Adelaide grew older together, their hair turning gray, their bodies showing the wear of hard work and full lives. But their love remained constant, a foundation they had both learned to trust completely. When Benjamin turned 50, Adelaide threw him a party at the ranch. All their children came, even Sam from back east. Grandchildren ran through the house, the next generation of Fosters. Friends and neighbors filled the yard. It was loud and joyful and perfect. That night, after everyone had left and they were alone in their room, Benjamin pulled Adelaide close. "Thank you," he said. "For what? The party. For everything. For saying yes all those years ago. For taking a chance on me, on us. For giving me this beautiful life." He kissed her forehead. "I know it was not easy for you at first. I know you had to fight to get here." "We both had to fight," Adelaide said, "but it was worth it. Every hard moment was worth it to get here, to have this." "I love you, Adelaide Foster. I have loved you since the day you walked into that meadow looking like your world had ended." "I love you too," Adelaide said. "You saved my life, you know. Not in some dramatic way, but in the most important way. You reminded me how to live, how to hope, how to believe." "We saved each other," Benjamin said. "That is what love does." They lived many more good years together. They watched their children build their own lives and families. They dealt with the challenges of aging bodies and changing times. The frontier was taming, becoming less wild. South Dakota achieved statehood in 1889. The ranch adapted and survived, passed from generation to generation. Through it all, Benjamin and Adelaide faced everything together. When Benjamin's health began to fail in his 60s, Adelaide cared for him with the same fierce love she had always shown. When her own body began to ache and slow, Benjamin was there, steady as always. They died within months of each other, as couples who have shared a deep love often do. Benjamin went first in his sleep, surrounded by family. He was 72 years old. His last words were to Adelaide, telling her once more that he loved her. Adelaide followed him that spring. She was 70 and had lived a full, rich life. In her last days, lucid and calm, she told her children stories about their father, about the early days when she had been so broken and he had offered his faith like a gift. "He saved me," she told them. "When I had nothing left to believe in, he believed for me." That is the greatest love anyone can show, to hold faith for someone who has lost their own. On her last evening, Faith sat beside her bed, holding her hand. "Are you afraid, Mama?" Faith asked. Adelaide thought about it. "No," she said finally. "I am not afraid. I have had a wonderful life. I have loved and been loved. I have seen my children and grandchildren grow. I have made peace with my past and with God. I am ready to see what comes next, and to see your father again. Do you think he will be waiting?" Faith's voice was thick with tears. "I know he will," Adelaide said with absolute certainty. "He promised he would never leave me willingly. Death is not willing. He will be there." She died that night quietly with a small smile on her face. Her children gathered around her bed and told stories about her and Benjamin, about the love story that had begun with borrowed faith and had grown into something beautiful and lasting. At the funeral, the church was packed. Adelaide had touched many lives in her years in Lead, had been mother and grandmother to many beyond her own family. The minister spoke about faith and love and second chances. He read from the Bible about how love never fails, how faith can move mountains. But the words that stuck with people, that were repeated and remembered, came from Tommy. Standing at his adopted mother's grave, this man who had been a traumatized 8-year-old boy when Adelaide and Benjamin took him in, he told a story. "When I was young and angry and hurting, I asked Mama Adelaide how she kept going after losing so much. She told me about meeting Papa Benjamin, about how she had told him she had no faith left, and Papa Benjamin told her to borrow his until hers returned." Tommy's voice broke. "That is what they did for all of us. They lent us their faith and love when we had none. They showed us how to heal, how to believe, how to build a life even after loss. That is their legacy. Not the ranch or the land, but the faith and love they gave so freely." Years later, when the grandchildren and great-grandchildren told stories about Benjamin and Adelaide Foster, they always came back to that moment in the meadow. The rancher on his knees in prayer, the woman who had lost her faith, and the words that had started everything. "I have no faith left," she had whispered, and the believing rancher had said, "Then borrow mine until yours returns." It was a simple exchange, but it had held the power to change everything. Because faith freely given is faith that can be received. Love without condition is love that can heal. And second chances, when truly embraced, can become the best chances of all. The ranch still stood, passed down through the generations. In the meadow where Benjamin used to pray, where he first met Adelaide, someone placed a simple wooden cross with their names carved in it. Couples would walk up there to propose or to pray or simply to remember the love story that had transformed two broken people into a family. And somewhere beyond death, in whatever comes after, Adelaide and Benjamin were together. Still talking, still walking hand in hand, their faith intact and their love eternal. The journey that had begun with borrowed faith had ended with a faith entirely their own, tested and proven through years of choosing each other, choosing hope, choosing love. The end was really just another beginning, as all good endings are. The love they had built continued in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch they had nurtured, in the community they had served. Their story became legend in Lead, South Dakota, a testament to the power of faith and second chances. And every time someone stood in that meadow and looked at the mountains and felt their own faith wavering, they would remember. You can borrow faith from those who believe. You can rebuild from broken places. You can find love after loss. You can start over, start again, start fresh. Adelaide and Benjamin Foster had proven it. They had lived it. And their legacy would endure as long as there were people who needed to believe that healing was possible, that love could conquer fear, and that faith once lost could indeed return.